No, I haven't corrected that yet, but I have made it on the computer. So the next copy I print off is that, and so that they can see.
You are live on.
We've got her. What?
This checklist.
Chris wants to talk to you about that.
Yeah, okay. There's something we're not going to be able to meet.
Right. The idea is a self-certification, not a self-certification, not a inspection by him. And we'll get started here.
So I just hooked to the unit with that.
Oh, I see glare. Yeah, I'm at the angle where it's just, so.
You want to tilt the screen?
Glare. I don't, you probably need to move it away. Yeah, that's better. Is that one okay?
Yeah. Everybody see it?
It looks a little bit stiff.
And then you're bringing us on, right?
We're there.
Yeah, you're there. In the
We're there. Can you hear us, Tara?
I can hear you. You guys are very tiny.
We're a long way off. It's a new camera, I guess, huh? We've been told we're a long way away if you're watching.
We're a long way away.
Yeah, because of the way the camera is. We're little itty bitty figures.
Yeah, they are.
Itty bitty figures, hi.
Say hi.
So this is Margaret Turner, and I believe we are live now. So
Yes.
it is 2:05. We are live on YouTube. We are live on Zoom, and we are live and in person. So I don't have to read all of the electronic meeting paraphernalia this time around. So as we go along, if people have questions, it would be good if you put them in the Zoom chat box or in the YouTube. You can also put something in the YouTube chat box if you want to ask a question. And we have people monitoring that, yes?
Well, actually, no, there's only those 3 that got the Zoom invite. So
Okay.
it did not go out to the general public. The
All
general
right.
public are on YouTube live stream. and
Live
They
stream.
can use the chat.
They can use the
Function.
chat on YouTube live stream. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Yep.
All right, so we are here at this special meeting of the Waterville Valley Board of Selectmen to discuss short-term rentals and how to implement the zoning changes that the public voted for back on March 9th. What we're trying to do is get together a process that works for the town and works for the people who want to engage in short-term rentals and implement that hopefully by the 1st of July. So who needs to start?
Well, Chris and Dave, I have been going through different ways to approach this. We heard very clearly the board's guidance at the last meeting that we want to keep this as simple as we possibly can for administrative purposes. I did some additional investigation with Department of Revenue Administration because there were some questions about what exactly the state requires and everything else. So I guess the first place we could look at would be the fact sheet, which is just the results of what I found from Department of Revenue Administration. I talked to the collections division at DRA, and basically the state's approach to this is if you rent a bed It doesn't even have to be a room. It's defined by DRA as renting a bed, and that rental is publicly listed anywhere, then that income is subject to meals and rooms tax. It's ultimately the owner's, operator's responsibility to collect and remit that money to the state. She said that the state does go online all the time. They go around in the public. They have people who report rooms being rented if they think that maybe they're not paying meals and rooms taxes. And then the state follows up and investigates those reports. But she said it is an aggressive program to try to identify all of these places that are renting the beds for income. For the past 2.5 years, because we've been especially concerned with Airbnb, for the past 2.5 years, the state has had an agreement with Airbnb that the company will collect 9% meals and rooms taxes from anyone using their platform in the state of New Hampshire. And then as an organization, Airbnb remits those funds directly to the state. She was not clear about whether or not they maintained a separate list or just made a one payment on a monthly basis. So however they're remitting that money. So I don't think it's broken down by every rental that's occurring.
If you're doing multiples, it is.
Okay. So Airbnb is keeping that.
Airbnb is your agent who does it for you.
There you go. Okay. Properties that are rented through a lease that is 6 months or longer is not subject to any of the DRA rules. So if it's less than that or a cumulative, so you can't have 6 1-month leases and then claim that that's not subject to meals and rooms, is the way she explained it to me. If you have a single lease that's for the 6-month period,
A minimum of
it's
6
not,
months.
minimum of 6 months. It's not subject to meals and rooms. And then with regards to safety compliance, that is purely a local issue. The state does not have a licensing set of guidelines for facilities that are subject to meals and rooms taxes to local health officials. The state building codes would apply, but only through the Department of Safety and Health and Human Services, not through DRA. So that's the information that I got from DRA, and I think it addressed some of the questions you had before. So basically, I took the Lincoln application form and the Lincoln regulations, which are 1-pagers or 1.5 pagers, and I modified them to use our terminology that we have in the zoning ordinance that was newly enacted, and set up an application form and a set of implementing regulations, very short and to the point, laying out who is going to be subject to this application and how they go about it, and what the terms would be if someone failed to register and then they were found to be operating a short-term rental without a permit. The intent is we can either send this to all of the applicable property owners in town, or we can make it known, publicly known, and then have people come to us. So it's whatever you prefer to do. far as getting it out. The application form, Chris, I provided them with a copy of the checklist, and you wanted to talk about maybe implementing something like that, modifying that list and including it with the application. The other piece to this is Tara had made up the flow chart that we can use as a kind of a starting point for somebody to go through that very quickly answers whether or not they are subject to filling out an application. So that's the information that we've put together. I don't know if you want to have Chris go through that checklist or if you want to ask questions, but that's what we have so far. And these are all drafts at this point.
It's fine to me.
It's the same thing on this.
The reversals that need to be fixed.
Yeah, I will
This
fix,
one as
yes,
well as the
yes,
bottom.
yes.
Okay.
I do have a bunch of questions on the checklist where some things aren't going to be achievable in units that already exist here. So we should probably talk about that.
Well, Chris, you would modify this checklist, correct? Because this is from California, but you would have to modify it for application here. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. That's just an example of basically the format in the procedure and not the content.
Okay, good. Right.
I have a couple of questions. I'd just like to go back to first things. In the short-term rental registration form, let me ask a pre-question to that question. Prior to the approval of the zoning amendments with regard to short-term rentals, there were, I believe, eight lodges or hotels, inns in the valley, 6 of which were in commercial 1 or village commercial zoning, which already were permitted for offering lodging facilities. Now we changed, we had hotel, motel, and we collapsed that thanks to Tara into just one term called lodging facilities. So does any of this, since they've already been permitted to operate?
Tara, I do not, it was not the purpose of the amendments to have that apply to the lodges, right?
So I guess I need to back up a step to answer, but what you sent out today that I hadn't seen before isn't really implementing the zoning. It's a additional layer of regulations that the select board would adopt under RSA 4111C. And I had shared with the planning board early on that I had a conversation with a municipal attorney about whether or not you can treat transient businesses, right, rental of rooms, different if it's in a home or a hotel. And my advice is still to ask the town council that question, whether if in this new regulation that you're going to adopt that goes beyond the zoning, is it okay to handle some room rentals one way and some another?
Is there a specific, in the regulations, is there a specific permit required for a lodging facility? And do they
Under
exist?
commercial use, is
And
that what you're asking?
so one would assume that those lodges have those permits.
Correct, that was my
Permits
point.
have been in position for a long time.
Yeah.
So that should, I don't know where it's coming from, but that should cover that.
That's my,
So, yes,
Yeah.
so they went through, whether it's the Golden Eagle, the Black Bear, or whatever, the condo lodges went through site plan review and were permitted for thea use,
right.
okay?
Are they,
So
are they
they've
inspected?
already been, and Chris, you do a occupancy inspection on them each year, right, for fire,
Not every single unit, but yes, the common areas.
common areas.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let's talk about village condo for a second. Is village condo has a rental desk and is renting individual units, but not all the units are rentals and it's very sparse. So the question is, does Village Condo have a condo, what do we call the permit, that's a lodging permit? Or would Village Condo need a lodging permit, or individuals that Village Condo represents need it?
This is they have the way our zoning reads is that Village Condo, which was not located, I believe, in either C1 or BC, but actually HDR.
Right.
So they've been renting in an area that's actually been silent in our zoning. But we do talk about a single management entity in zoning.
Okay.
So I guess what I'm getting at, seems to me there are these properties, 8 of them, 6 of which are in commercial, DC or C1, 2 of which are in HDR, which now by the zoning amendment can rent STRs with central, single management entity. And they already go through some sort of permitting. So
But wait a minute.
why would any of this apply to them? Now, there is the one cutout. I mean, I know where you're going. There is the one, there is the example in these lodges, and I'm not talking about homeowners associations, just these commercial entities that which allow their, or look the other way, could be one or the other, they're the owners of the units in those entities to rent on their own. Now, that raises an interesting question. If they are already permitted as being part of the larger entity, why should any of this apply to them? Or do we want to make it apply to them? I'm just raising that question.
You've raised the question, and I'll complicate it a little bit more, or maybe clarify a little bit more. The people that rent through the lodge at Golden Eagle or Black Bear are part of an association, a limited liability corporation that they rent through. It's separate from the homeowners association in the lodge. Now, the question that Rich brought up to clarify it even more is, I think if we look to the Airbnb and the VRBO, you're going to find the majority of the units listed for rent in Waterville Valley are in these lodges, where people who, there's a very gray area in the lodge bylaws which talk about, are you able to rent, are you not able to rent? And it hasn't been satisfied on either side of either of the lodges yet. But those are the ones you're going to find that are there.
Right.
The question is, I think what we'll probably find is when we start going to look for people to register, the people are going to look to register, at least some of them will be lodge owners. So I think if you are not renting through the lodge or a licensed entity, you need to be registered.
You don't need to be registered.
You do need to be
No,
registered.
you do.
If you're not going through.
Oh, if you're not, I'm
If
sorry.
you're not
I
going through
didn't hear
the
the
front
not.
desk,
Right.
then you would
That-
need to register.
Yeah, so none of this would apply.
Except my question is, we get back to Village, where Village has a front desk, but the front desk is not in the Village. It's an H.
But I think, so I just want to get back to Tara's question about treating properties differently. I don't see how we are treating properties differently if there is the carve out already in the zoning ordinance that says that this doesn't apply if you are within the single management entity.
It just already, it's already prior to the adoption of the zoning amendments on short-term rentals.
Yeah.
And VC and C1 lodging was permitted already.
If I could clarify, what you're proposing to do has really nothing to do with the zoning. You're proposing to adopt business regulations under RSA 4111C. And
I understand that.
And the question I asked the attorney at the Municipal Association, because it came up in a couple of towns at once, was if you have a regulation that requires X for transient use of a room, is it okay to have different requirements if that's in a hotel versus a single family home? And there, it seemed like there was different opinions on that. So I'm just suggesting that you double check with your own town council, that's all.
Okay, okay, we'll ask, so maybe what we could do
Yeah.
is we could still have this we could modify the registration so that we could have a single regulation which would apply to all STRs throughout the town, regardless of zone, regardless of whether it's a single management, and then just have the lodges fill out the form, okay, when we're doing the inspection of the common areas.
But we
And
will have to
register
go for every room.
No, have them, because it's a single management entity. They could just file one application for the entity.
So I think the license makes it exempt, but that's.
Well,
Yeah,
no,
I'm leaning.
but I'm just saying, if we need to treat everybody with our business licensing format here, the same, how difficult would it be for them to fill out a single piece of paper?
Is it business licensing though?
It is.
That we want to get into. Well, maybe we're approaching it from the most difficult of the situations. If we look at just single family homes or units located in homeowners associations, right? Those two are the most uncomplicated, right? There are no inspections that are undertaken by the town once those units are built. That's correct, right?
And that's all that's different with the zoning, besides that it's clearly allowed now. That's all that's required to get the zoning permit is that it meet the building code.
And so that's it.
That's it. That's all the zoning says is if it meets the building code, you could do it in these districts.
And we express it as the New Hampshire State Building Code. I think we wrote
That's
it
what we've adopted.
precisely into the zoning amendment.
And could I,
Go ahead.
Mark, are you still also working on a zoning permit application that we talked about?
No, because I don't know, I don't care what we call it. And I just care about what it says to implement what the zoning regulations say. I don't care if it's a zoning permit or if it's a business permit. I really just want somebody to give me language that we can use to send out to people to get them registered. I don't care if it's once and it goes with the property permanently. I don't care if it's renewed every year. I just want somebody to give me language because this is what other towns, this type of format is what other towns are using. And if we're going to consider that a business license, fine, we'll do it under 4111C. If that doesn't do what you want, then somebody give me the language and we will write it up in the correct format because I don't know what you guys want. I keep getting
I like
different.
this. I think this works great. What does anyone else think?
What are we
I'm
talking
hearing,
about?
I'm
The
hearing,
short-term rental registration.
Short-term
Well,
rental.
I'm trying to understand to whom it applies. We say any dwelling unit offered for transient, it should say use more than a total of 30 days in the calendar
More
year.
than 30 non-consecutive.
yes.
Right. And increments of less, yeah. So it says any dwelling. I don't see.
No, I get you, but I thought when we got into this whole thing, that until we got to zoning clause number 6, zoning change 6,
Right.
we had created an exception for the lodges. The lodges didn't have to deal with this. But the lodges don't have to deal with this, but the guy who owns in the lodge and doesn't rent through the lodge does have to deal with it.
That's correct.
And I think this stuff accomplishes that.
Does that say that? And it was unclear to me in reading it that,
See, I think it's implied by our regular zonings. It doesn't have to be
And I think we take care of that in
you
these two
talk
different
about the
types.
two
So
types.
I think we can work with town council to clarify so that it does match up with what Mike just said. So that if they rent through the single entity, they are not subject to this. If they rent on their own, they are subject to it.
Yeah, no, that's what I was, that was the whole
But-
basis of where I was going.
But Tara, how would we change this form? How would we change our current building permit application to reflect the change in the zoning?
So, my point has been, so your zoning says, it will be unlawful to change the nature or extent of the use of any building or lot without first obtaining a permit.
Okay,
But you don't have a zoning permit application. You have site plan, you have building permits, you have special exception, variance, but you're missing that starting point where somebody writes down and describes what they want to do, what the change of use is. Maybe it's a law office in their home or a hairdresser's seat. Maybe it's changing from a bookstore to a cafe. Maybe it's the food trucks and outside tables in the golf course parking lot. And then somebody, whether it's you, Mark, or Nick, or Chris, says, okay, now you also need these other things. You need a building inspection. You need site plan review. You need to go to the zoning board for a special exception. And then they'd get the zoning permit when they've done all those other things. So it's not necessarily an instead, but it's something that I could take an hour and do for you that I think would plug up a lot of these holes. And maybe for short-term rentals, it says, oh, you also need to go get this permit registration thing.
okay. I'm fine with doing it that way, and that way it's clearer to the applicant
Mhm.
what they need to do, and we can use it for everything that pertains to land use,
So,
and not just short-term rental.
so can you also change that to word it a little bit differently to make it more clear what people need going forward, to make it a change of use building permit? So it's,
No.
people get, no, let me just explain where I'm coming from.
What you
Where I
want to
hear
call,
people-
what you want-
excuse me, I just finished my thought. Where I hear people getting confused is the word site plan review for changing their business or changing anything they've been doing going forward. So if it's change of use / building permit / site plan review, it encompasses all of that so people know that they need to do this when they are making a change. That's all I wanted to say.
Right, and I think that's what, Tara, that's what I'm hearing you say is the zoning permit would then direct them to the next step,
That's
whether
why,
it's,
that's why I want the language of
STR.
change of use
Yes.
/ permit.
Right.
So people understand there's a methodology and a way to go with these things.
okay. Yeah, Tara, I think that would be useful for you to draw that up and let us look at that, because I think that would at least get them going in the correct direction. It'd be a lot easier for Nick and Chris to answer questions when they're asked, what do I need to do?
and I had sent you guys some examples, and there's kind of two different ways it's handled. One is having a separate one pager. Another is renaming your building permit application, zoning and building permit application, and just adding a little section at the beginning.
Okay,
So what Tara is describing is kind of a precursor that as somebody reads down this one pager, they would say, oh, for short-term rental, I need to go fill out this other form.
exactly.
Is that
Right.
what it is?
Exactly.
Or if I want to add,
A hairdresser.
a moose racing course
Yeah.
into the library, I have to add.
Can we have one of those?
And
It's up to you. If you have anything best, I'll have to put it together.
a lot of the confusion that I've seen with applicants being on a different page than the planning board is because you're missing this first step.
Okay,
Sounds like a good fix in general, let alone
right,
for
and so
short-term
we
rentals.
will work on this language to clean up the
Right.
vice versa here.
Right.
And we will send this to town council and changed the language in the two types of short-term rentals so that it encompasses those who are in a single management building, for lack of a better word.
We say single management entity,
Entity.
what it says.
Yeah, and then if they're renting, make it clear that if they are renting through the single management entity, they don't have to apply for this, but if they're going to go out on their own, they do. And
Now-
then we would send this
As-
to
as-
all property.
Does this work? I mean,
Yeah,
someone
but I
who does
just,
this,
it's a little bit of a gray area to that.
Okay,
As long as this is where I come back to village again. As long as that single entity is collecting room and meals tax on their behalf.
okay.
It's like, it doesn't affect me because we don't do anything less
And
than a
so-
couple of months. And when we do something less than 6 months, we collect the meals tax and we administer it, so there can't be anything.
Okay. Does that meet the intent when you?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I mean, really, I think very straightforward.
and you were proposing, rather than, for when, people are not, doing short-term rentals, from a single management entity, and they do register, you are requiring certification,
Well,
not inspection. You would do this,
Right.
there's not an inspection. You're requiring the owner, the rentee,
yes,
renter, no, rentee.
yes, the renter,
The person renting the property
that's
Yes.
right.
to
The landlord.
certify, the landlord to
So-
certify.
So Chris,
that
that's your
they meet-
idea with that checklist, right? Where you're gonna come up with a checklist that they will self-certify, answer those questions in lieu of you doing an inspection of all of these parcels.
Correct. And if they feel like the checklist confuses them or anything, there is a disclaimer at the very end that says we will certainly come out and help you answer any questions you may have. And, we'll do the inspection ourselves if they wish.
If you keep on going to the end of that one, and the failure to do so may result in suspension or revocation of the short-term residential rental permit.
Yeah, we'll,
If you got a couple of minutes, Chris, can I stop up and just see for about 5 and go over a couple of these with you?
Yes.
Just minimize the work for the town.
yeah, the other questions, are we going to charge a fee, a registration fee? Is this gonna be an annual thing?
Can I make a suggestion that we find a charitable cause to donate this fee to make it kind of a pass-through? It would go to the library or to this educational fund or something, or scholarships or something. And make the fee minimal.
You need the registration fee.
I think you probably need to tie it to your costs and have it go into the same fund that pays Chris.
It's going to either, we could do it for the planning board, we could do it for code enforcement costs to the town to alleviate those. I
You
mean,
could do it for the
this-
mailing costs, to send this out annually to
mailing
everyone.
costs. Yeah, I mean,
I mean, that's
There's-
gotta be $1,000 or more to send it to all the property
It's-
owners annually,
it's
yes.
close to
Send it to all
800.
the property owners.
Huh?
I don't think we need to send it to all.
I
the
think
property
we
owners.
should.
I
I really
think
think,
it'll just confuse a lot of people.
well, it's information that I think they need to have. And I don't want anybody to come back and say, well, I didn't know I needed
But
to do
if
this.
you read the guideline, there's specific language that allows you a period of not knowing without a fine. We're creating a problem before we really have one, as I see it.
We're not allowed to put this in the property tax bill, right? Unfortunately,
No.
that'd be a perfect.
See, it says first offense is a warning, second
Right.
offense, costs it, but there's a specific time.
But first offense might be for somebody who bought their property after the annual distribution of the letter.
So then the sending out the letter does no good because we sent out 1,000 letters to people who don't know because they just bought a new property. I think maybe
Yeah,
if
but
the
there aren't
regulation.
1,000 new people that buy it.
But I think, anyone moving in and getting a new property, but you can coordinate with the realtors to create a welcome package, which we give them the dog regulation, we give them, the athletic club rules. If there's something from the town, we'd give it out too. That would be simple for us to do.
I don't know, it seems like it seems like fair warning to me, I guess.
Whatever you guys want to do.
I-
I'm not gonna fight this battle.
I know it's not, it doesn't, I can, someone want to flip a coin? Yeah, no, I mean, is there any,
People are not going to go to the website.
yeah,
I
Well,
think
most
they
of the
will
people aren't
pay.
gonna rent, or they're gonna be in the hotel, or they're gonna be exempt.
Yeah, I think we do one mass mailing at the beginning. We'll have a list of short-term rental units that are registered, and we can send those out. And then just put a notice that if you are not a registered short-term rental property, then you need to go to this place on the town website and you need to complete the form. We don't need to mail the entire form to everybody
No,
in
I
town.
wasn't.
I would just send out an annual renewal to those.
That's
That we have
different than sending out a mailing.
Right, but I mean, initially, I think people ought to know that this is.
yeah, that's how I.
Oh, yes,
understood it.
yes,
Not-
the
not as-
first
not as the
mailing
full-
will be-
No, I took it as a full mailing.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't mean
That's
send everybody the registration.
No, that's what I
I
meant by
meant
fair
send
warning.
everybody.
No, I took it as the registration.
What, can it be sent to, can it be something that could be put into the water sewer trash
Yes.
Bill?
Um,
to save on costs?
Well, yeah, it's better to.
You think separate?
The
Okay.
first time.
The first
And then the
time.
renewal will probably have 40 or 50 of these at the most, and that'll be easy.
But I mean, we were already had people calling saying,
Absolutely.
what do I do?
Yeah, they want to fill out the form.
And we've changed it to September?
Well, because we're
Still
continuing
working on
down the road, we're still working on it. I see this as still being a meeting or two away of being adopted.
Mhm. Okay.
So I think the September timeframe or August at the earliest would be better.
Okay. As far as the fee, I was thinking in the nature of $25-50.
Is that standard? Does anyone?
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what it is.
Lincoln's charging 50. And they're keeping the same form, in basically the same format. They just have more units to deal with. But they're not requiring their single member fees.
What do you think you think something like 25? Is that-
25, 50, whatever. It's not gonna stop anyone from doing it. It's not gonna make anybody do it. It's not gonna make us rich. It's not gonna
No,
support any.
We're not looking to
No.
make a huge amount of money on
No.
this.
Maybe we can get a new flashlight for enforcing it now.
So Chris, you'll update the checklist,
Yes,
come up with an amendment, and Terry, you're gonna get us that zoning amendment or zoning permit application form.
Sure.
And we'll go forward from here.
I would add though, I think in the mailing, the flow chart that Tara put together will be very helpful to people because it explains very simply, someone looking at it can figure out where they're gonna land at the bottom. With some language that says, oh, but if you rent it from a central,
Right.
whatever, single management entity, this doesn't apply to you.
Right.
Through.
and on the flow chart, the title up the top says you may need to apply for a zoning permit, I think. Is that what we're saying?
Well, we're gonna
think
change
yes,
that
you
to
will.
STR. Well, no, we're gonna
Well, they would start with the.
start with the zoning
right.
permit. Yes, yes.
Okay.
You need a zoning permit in order to apply,
Well, an application, zoning permit application.
zoning permit application.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else for today?
Solve the problem.
I just have one thing. Tara, I'd like to with the selectmen, talk to you about one of the upcoming, planning board meeting. Are you gonna be available?
Sorry, I only heard half of what you said.
I need to talk to you, while I have Wendy in the building about, an item for the agenda for the upcoming planning board meeting. Are you gonna be available for a phone call?
Oh, yep.
Okay, well, as soon as I finish with the selectmen, we'll go upstairs and I'll give you a call.
Okay, great. I'll see you then.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Chris, Dave, thank you.
Thanks,
Nope.
Dave.
The only other thing that I had was I have a P&S, a conditional P&S for the parcel of land from the water. Just like while I have you together, and you worked on this with Bob. So it's very simple.
PNS.
For that little piece of.
For the little piece of land.
land.
The wetlands.
The wetlands.
Cross
$10,000 wetland.
Valley Road.
$10,000. So the Conservation Commission.
Are we adjourned? Are we?
No, we're still on.
Oh,
Different topic.
Different topic. It's under other business. On the agenda. The,
I left you blanks to fill in and change
Yeah.
what you wanted.
yes, right. I mean, I'll talk to you about
Yeah.
the details, but basically the Conservation Commission has met. They're happy. They want to do fundraising, okay? So that the town doesn't have to use any additional monies. We have about $4,500 in the Conservation Commission account. And then they have $3,000 in their operating budget line item. They want to raise money so that the town wouldn't have to use any contingency, and they wouldn't have to use any of their operating budget in order to purchase this land. So they will work on it, and I think you can accept it as unanticipated revenue for a specific purpose. Whatever they do raise, they'll bring in to you, and then you can go through your public hearing process.
Okay. And do we have to do anything with this?
No,
today?
if you're okay
So
with me continuing on with it, I will sign it on behalf of the town.
Okay,
We have 45 days to close. He wants to close by June 15th. So my plan would be to take it out of contingency initially, and then as they raise money,
Take it as unanticipated revenue.
we'll take it as unanticipated revenue and pay it back. Okay.
sounds good.
We can put in a little picnic area in that.
We haven't really
Decided, yeah.
talked about it.
Looking for a sponsor.
But I was
a little plaque
thinking-
With their name.
Well, and I was
They're gonna
thinking.
donate.
Well, no, I was actually thinking about maybe coming to the planning board and rezoning it as greenbelt because it's contiguous with other greenbelt land, and that allows the use of a picnic area or something like that, but prevents future development of it.
It's too wet to develop, but that's the idea, is to do, and make a place kids can go fishing.
Exactly, that kind of thing. So,
Even adults can go fishing.
all right, so we will continue to move down that path, but the Conservation Commission said to say thank you, that you were willing to work with them, and they're happy to do it. And I think that is all I have. We have a meeting Wednesday at 3,
Regular meeting.
regular meeting.
Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I make that motion.
Have a second?
I'll second.